So good afternoon, everyone. Let me welcome you all to the 62nd session of eNISHIP, our e-learning platform for HIV/TB. And I am very happy to introduce our expert for the day. It is Professor JB Sharma. He is Professor of Gynecology and Head of Urogyne in AIIMS, New Delhi. He is a very, very well-known figure in his field and has done extensive work. He has a special interest in genital TB and has several publications in the field. He is also the recipient of the very prestigious BC Roy and Lapsetwar Award. And we are indeed fortunate to have him to guide us on a case of genital TB. We couldn't have got anybody better than him for this case. Welcome, sir, to the platform today. Uh, Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Upasana, for your nice introduction. Thanks.
And I have Dr. Vandana with me, who coordinates these activities from Share India. And then we have Mr. Ajit and Mr. Gaurav. Ajit is again from Share India, and Gaurav is from Echo India. So this is a small team and a small initiative to help us know more about HIV/TB. And so while we are still talking, I would request Ajit to please pull up the attendance poll while I discuss the agenda. So while still doing the attendance poll, let me continue with the session. So as we know that today's session is on a very unique topic. It is on endometrial TB. And though sitting in the ART center where we are medical officers and senior medical officers, we might think, why do we need to know about, of all the things, endometrial TB? But please understand there are two reasons for it. One, it is not so uncommon as you might think. And if we do not know, we will obviously not look for it. And secondly, being a ART center staff, you have to treat all kinds of TB. We don't have the luxury of saying that I am a pulmonologist or I am an orthopedic surgeon or I am a gynecologist. So I will see only this part of the body. In HIV medicine, you have to see every part of the body, both male and female. So we do not have that kind of luxury. It is important for us to know about all kinds of TB. And that is why we actually requested Professor JB Sharma, who's such a senior person in this field, to talk to us, because I was very, very concerned that our medical officer and our ART staff should know about this kind of TB very, very properly, but yet in a very simplified manner, which sir would be talking to us soon. So are we done with the poll of attendance?
Yes, ma'am, we can proceed.
Yes, you can.
So let's proceed, and let's proceed with the pre-test questionnaire. Please, Ajit, can you pull up the pre-test? So which of the following symptoms can occur in genital tuberculosis? Please select the correct option. Fever with night sweats, weight loss, menstrual dysfunction, infertility, either primary or secondary, or all of the above. Coming to the next question, which of the following options can be adopted to diagnose genital TB? History from the patient, clinical examination of the patient, endometrial sampling for AFB, endometrial sampling sent for AFB, PCR, and histopath, laparoscopy and hysteroscopy, or all of the above. Can I request everyone to attend the pretest? So I would now like to request Dr. L. Arnachalam, who is a senior medical officer of the Salem ART Plus Center in Tamil Nadu, to kindly present the case from his clinic.
I am Dr. Arnachalam from SMO and Salem ART Plus Center. Today I have presented a case of endometrial tuberculosis. This case is our Salem ART client patient, 28 years old female, weight around 50 kg. So she was registered in ART Center in 2015 June. Then ART initiation is only in 2017 after 2 years of pre-ART LFU. Then we have started on ART in 2017. Then IPT also started in 2017 December to 2018 June. Then this endometrial TB diagnosis confirmation in the 2 months back, 16th September 2020. Then ART started on the same day. This type of TB detected is microbiologically confirmed extrapulmonary tuberculosis. Past history of tuberculosis nil, no past history is there. Actually, this case is a known case of female, 28 years female, HIV positive patient registered at ART center on an ART for the last 3 years and also completed the 6 months course of IPT. Then on regular ART follow, patient complaints of irregular menstrual cycle and infertility and severe abdominal pain. She referred to OG department, obstetric and gynecology. They have a lot of investigations. The basic investigations like the thyroid function test, hormonal test, FSH, LH, prolactin level, everything is normal. Then they prescribe the ultrasound abdomen also normal. Then they go for transvaginal sonogram of pelvis. They have found out the homogeneous myometrial echoes. Then they take the case for the endometrial curettage. That sample endometrial tissue specimen sent to histopathological examination as well as semen testing. Histopathological report, pathologist report shows it's few glands lined by columnar epithelium surrounding stroma, shows granulomatous composed of epithelioid cells, lymphocytes, Langerhans cells, and foreign body vein cells. Areas of caseation necrosis also seen. There is no evidence of malignancy. Their final conclusion impression means endometrial tuberculosis, pathologist report. Then CBNet report for the tissue specimen of endometrial tissue, also MTB detected, as well as rifampicin highly sensitive. Then patient, we sent the sample to the sputum also, we have screened for pulmonary, sputum CBNet also not detected. So then we have put on ATT, 4 pills, 4 FDC, then with the pyridoxine on the 16th September 2020. CD4 sent on the time of ART initiation 595, then follow 476, 625, then latestly 248. So maybe in a downward trend, it's suspecting immunological failure. We refer to viral load also. Viral load shows also 26,47,515 copies in the 23rd October 2020. So based on this, we are also suspecting the treatment failure. Now refer to SASAP for second line initiation. Then other investigations on 15th September, serum creatinine is 0.9, LFT, GOT is 30, SGPT is 25, KFT, urea 29, blood urea 29, serum creatinine 0.9, hemoglobin 8.6. Then CBNet report already showed sputum CBNet not detected, but endometrial tissue detected and liver sensitivity. Then we have started on ART regimen is tenofovir lamidin efavirenz for the past 3 years. Then ATT regimen is 4 FDC, 4 pills OD. Then cotrimoxazole also single strength 2 OD is given. Then issue for discussion, this is usually a rare presentation of endometrial TB. It is the first case in Salem ART Center we have diagnosed endometrial TB. Then even after 3 years of ART, completed IPT also, then patient developed active disease. TB should be suspected in infertility cases. That's why we are interested to sharing this case to this forum.
What is the date of CD4 248?
Excuse me. 2011, 2020.
And the one previous to it was 650. Something in the range of 600.
Yes. After starting editing only, it's last month, November 20th, we have seen the 248.
Okay, and the one, doctor, the one before this would be of the 600 one was when? Which date? The one before this of which date?
600 and January, 24th January 2020.
Okay. So before I summarize the case, I would like to open it to the house. Does the house want to ask anyone from the audience would like to ask any question, any clarification about the case? Any questions that you would like to ask or any comments, any observations that you would like to make on the case? Anybody from the audience? Sir from NRI ART Center, sir, would you like to make any observation? Professor Sharma, would you like to ask the presenter any questions, sir? I'll just summarize the case. And Vandana, please keep a track on sir's screen. As soon as his connection comes back, please tell me in between. Okay. So I would just like to summarize the case. This is a young lady, a young PLHIV and she was registered way back, but then she was a pre-ART LFU. And when she came back to the center, she was started on ART in 2017. After starting ART, even IPT was started, and she must have completed her course of IPT somewhere in 2018, somewhere in June 2018. And 2 years later to this completion of IPT, somewhere in June or maybe July of 2020, she starts having symptoms of menstrual irregularity, pain, abdomen. Very correctly, it was being worked up very nicely. Very correctly, the medical officer got a thyroid function done, because we can also see menstrual irregularities in hypothyroidism, which came out to be normal, which led them to suspect that something else was the problem. So they investigated for pulmonary TB also with the sputum CBNAT, and they got an ultrasound done. But the interesting thing is that the ultrasound of the abdomen was normal. Most of us would stop at an ultrasound and say, okay, we can't find anything, any problem, and we would stop there. But fortunately, in this case, the ART center was very vigilant, and they went on to do a transvaginal ultrasound in which they could find a endometrial lesion. It was biopsied. It was sent for CBNAT, and MTB came back positive. It was sent for histopath, which also corroborated the point that it has. It also corroborated the point that it has active TB, and they started patient on ATT. But unfortunately, the CD4 of the patient has gone down. It is when they started TB treatment, it was about more than 600, and now it is 248. So having said that, sometimes you can have a fall in CD4 and rise in viral load because of the opportunistic infection itself. But with the opportunistic infection itself, though we would expect a fall in CD4, we would not expect such a high rise of viral load. So there is a very, very high probability that this patient is also looking at virological failure of HIV, and maybe that is the reason that the patient got this episode of tuberculosis despite IPT. Because if your ART fails, then only IPT will not help in prevention of TB. The risk of TB is very high. And I can see that we have Professor Sharma back with us. He wanted to ask a question when there was a problem with the connection. Sir, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, Dr. Arunachalam and Dr. Upasana, thank you very much for this brilliant case. And actually, it's a real case scenario which you must be seeing in your day-to-day practice. And now with the, HIV and the tuberculosis co-positivity is a big problem. And this becomes a problem. I think you are more expert in that aspect. But all patients of HIV are definitely at much higher risk of developing tuberculosis. So we have to be all the time vigilant. So Dr. Arunachalam, yeah, thank you for that. But I just want to confirm that, how did you make the diagnosis of genital tuberculosis? What I can recall that you did endometrial sampling on her, and endometrial sampling, was it only PCR positive or it was CBNet positive?
Dr. Arunachalam, could you kindly answer?
Okay. Actually, this is endometrial curettage was done by our obstetric gynecologist, sir. It was sample endometrial tissue was sent to histopathological examination as well as CBNet tissue. So both the findings are pathologist also, histopathologist also gave the diagnosis of endometrial tuberculosis. CBNet also detected with rifampicin sensitive data. Yeah,
you did say rifampicin sensitive, so that is understood that it must be CBNet only, because in TB-PCR we don't get. Yeah. Yes, so I want to make a point that to the house that only on the basis of TB-PCR we don't make the diagnosis. No. So that should be clear to everybody. Only on CBNet. I mean, if you do endometrial biopsy, either you must you must see AFB on microscopy, or you do culture sensitivity, or you demonstrate it on CBNet. Gene expert positivity. With that, you can also know the rifampicin sensitivity or not. And similarly, histopath epithelioid granuloma. So if you do see epithelioid granuloma, in your case, I can recall you said very clearly it was epithelioid granuloma, Langerhans cells also there. So that is highly specific for tuberculosis, very, very accurate, almost gold standard. So this patient did have, so what I want to highlight that only on the basis of PCR, in absence of gene expert and in absence of histopath, we don't make the diagnosis of genital tuberculosis. Otherwise, false positivity is very, very high. many gynecologists, private practitioners are treating infertility patient only on the basis of TB PCR, which is not accepted by the program and not by the WHO, and neither we recommend that. So that I want to highlight. We have to demonstrate. If you have some suspicion, which I will be telling in my, small presentation also, that if you have high suspicion on clinical history, like patient has got infertility, patient has got oligomenorrhea, menstrual dysfunction, maybe some other symptoms, like some weight loss, some, as Dr. Upasana said in the presentation also, like night sweats, etc. You are suspecting tuberculosis, but no pulmonary or other extrapulmonary TB. And on endometrial sampling, everything else is negative, but only PCR is positive, and you are suspecting it, but even then you can't start the treatment. Then you have to, you subject the patient to more investigation, which can be like if you are suspecting any tubovarian mass or anything, then you can do ultrasound scan or CT scan, which can demonstrate very subtle finding on that by an experienced ultrasonologist. No. And similarly, otherwise, what we do at AIIMS, we tend to do a laparoscopy and hysteroscopy on those patients where we are, if the patient is on, like in your patient, because she has got epithelioid granuloma on histopath and she has got CBNet positive, so there is no need to do laparoscopy or hysteroscopy on her. It's proven already. So we can straightway start her ATT. But in case only PCR is positive and there is clinical suspicion of tuberculosis, but CBNet is negative, histopath is negative, culture is negative, then we can subject the patient to laparoscopy, hysteroscopy, which is not unethical, because this patient will require laparoscopy, hysteroscopy for tubal patency test in a case of infertility. So that's what we tend to do at AIIMS. And if on laparoscopy, hysteroscopy, we have findings of genital tuberculosis, which we will discuss in my presentation, like, definite finding, probable finding, like tubercles, some adhesions, cages, nodules, and other findings which we'll be discussing. So if they are present with positive PCR, then, so it's the laparoscopy then which will make the diagnosis, not TB PCR. So that is what I want to highlight and all. But I think you did a good job that, always. So, what I want to highlight that you have to have very, very high index of suspicion to diagnose an EPTB patient. Pulmonary TB is not a difficult thing that, the patients are symptomatic and easy to make diagnosis. But EPTB, especially genital tuberculosis, because patient may have very subtle findings. They are not, like, patients look very healthy to you, but only on careful history, she may have little bit of like very marginal weight loss, or there may be family history is very important. I want to highlight that the family history, personal history, past history is very, very crucial. So please do spend some more time on these patients. Quite often I'm seeing, ladies pregnant. When they were adolescent girls, they looked after their dying grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, or some uncle, because it is a custom in our villages that usually the adolescent girl looks after the elderly parents, parents or elderly grandparents who died of tuberculosis. Quite a few patients, at least I have seen 5 or 6 such, ladies now, when they got married, and then when I took the history, they say no. But when I took the deep detailed history, then she said, okay, yes, about when I was 12-year-old, my grandfather died of tuberculosis and I used to look after him. And he died of pulmonary TB. So at that time, she got the infection, but it was not, very obvious to her. So probably she had some pulmonary evidence, then which got implanted into the endometrial cavity or tube and making her sterile. So this history is very, very commonly seen. So past history of tuberculosis in the family, in herself, and sometimes married women may not disclose it in front of husband that she had a tuberculosis in the past. So we have to be very careful about it. We don't want to break her marriage. So what we take the patients in, separate, and we disclose it to her that I'm not going to disclose anything to your in-laws, We want to want her family life to be stable rather than breaking. So then they, in confidence, they tell us, sir, please don't tell my mother-in-law, my husband. So we say, no, but you tell us. So then they tell us, I had a, patch when I was 14-year-old, 15-year-old, and even I had ATT also. To which we don't then disclose it to the husband. Also, this history, you have to be careful, because she will, in front of her husband, she will say, no, I didn't have any tuberculosis. So, you have to be very careful, and quite often you can get. And as in your case, it's a case of HIV. So in HIV positive patients, we have World Authority Upasana Agarwal on HIV here. She has been traveled a lot also. So that's great. So, but these patients are very, very high risk for developing, pulmonary tuberculosis as well as extrapulmonary tuberculosis, including MOT. Last week only I saw a case of MOT in such a patient. So you have to be very, very careful. Always keep a low suspicion. And in your case, I'm not expert in HIV, but I could make out the copies were in millions, copies of HIV. So that means this patient faltered her ART somewhere. So whenever the secret is, I get patients like Pelican inflammatory disease, very severe vulvovaginal candidiasis, with HIV or tuberculosis or diabetes sometime. So that was I tell the patient wants me to treat her PID, she wants me to treat her severe candidal vaginitis, she wants me to treat her severe UTI, recurrent UTI. What I tell her that it's you have got diabetes pose. So I said, you first control your diabetes. I can treat your vaginitis now, I can treat your UTI now, but unless you control your diabetes, I mean, that the basic purpose, you have to control your diabetes. Similarly, HIV positive patient. I have diagnosed as 3 or 4 HIV patient had such severe vulvovaginitis, I mean, which I never saw in my life. No, I mean, red inflamed vulva and all, which you don't see normally. So I said to my agent that, get her diabetes test done, get her HIV. She was HIV positive, never known to her. Similarly, one patient had unknown, as you didn't know, her blood sugar came out to be 380. So like that, we diagnosed because you such severe this thing. So the secret is that I said, treat your HIV. I refer to my ART center that you have to have your CD4 count under control and all. We will treat your like vaginitis, we will treat it. But ultimately, unless your HIV is under control, unless your diabetes is under control, under your basic immunosuppressive pathology is under control, this will keep on coming up and again and again. So same is about tuberculosis. So I mean, the main secret in your case is probably the proper control of her HIV. I mean, she has got millions of copies of the virus. So that probably because of that, I think her like CD4 count dropped so much down, and then automatically she is bound to have tuberculosis, like especially extrapulmonary tuberculosis. But when they do develop, then you have to treat it. I mean.
Thank you, sir. I think these were excellent insights into the case, and actually you would even get further insights into the case after sir delivers his didactic, because after the didactic we would request him once again to give his recommendations on the case, and I have noted down his the thoughts that he gave us just now, and we would talk about them together in the end. But now I would like to request Professor Sharma to kindly give his didactic. His didactic has a very interesting title. It is How I Treat TB in Gynecological Situations. Please, sir, requesting you to begin.
Thank you. So I want to share the screen.
Yes, sir.
NRI ART, have one question. Is raising hand. So.
Yes, sir. So meanwhile, sir is trying. So you can ask your question, sir.
Madam, I think is it the uterus is primarily involved? What about the tubes and the surrounding history of urinal symptoms and bladder symptoms? Whether frequency of the urination and maybe there. We cannot say directly the uterus, how can it will be, whether there may be some source, and primarily we have to rule out about the tubal infection and history, and the patient is lower abdominal pain means maybe there may other things may be involved, and we have to work out on that. The CT scan is not there, that's why we are unable to have. Sir, I want some more enlightenment from Sir Dr. Sharma about these endometriosis directly involving, or otherwise the source maybe have to see the tubal main and ovaries also, the surrounding structures and the ureters and other things, and the pain is coming because the uterus is by the side of that one. They maybe give some pressure, and because of these endometriosis and muscle is involved shedding out. So maybe some contractions of the uterus and bulky uterus that may be giving the pressures and causing the frequent lower abdominal pain relating to that. But I want to know whether it is necessary or not and other things. I want some enlightenment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir,
sir,
after can you see my
please
slide now? Can you see my slide now?
Sir, I think it has to be put in that presentation mode. Has it come in the presentation mode yet?
Yes, it is in the presentation mode.
Okay. So, sir, from NRI AP, your question is noted. I would request you to just hold that thought for just 10 minutes. Let sir give his talk. Then there can be an open house, and sir would be more than happy to answer questions.
Yeah, I have also noted this question. I will, after this talk, then, we'll be able to answer it in a better way.
And
many
there is
part will be covered in the presentation also.
And there is also a question by Zarina about Iris. We would also answer that after the talk. Is that okay, Zarina? So I now request Dr. Sharma to kindly deliver.
Are you able to see, Upasana, my presentation?
Yes, sir. I am able to see absolutely.
Okay. Everyone. So can I start then? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much, Dr. Upasana. It's a real brilliant opportunity to interact with all of you and this thing. So I will like female genital tuberculosis, how I diagnose and treat it. And so we know that tuberculosis is a major global health problem. I won't go into the detail that have already been highlighted to all of you a lot of time, but almost 10 million people are there in the world. and MTB we know, but genital tuberculosis almost like is responsible for about 10% cases of infertility. And like out of total tuberculosis, we know that pulmonary is more important, but 15 to 20% cases are extrapulmonary. And in patients of HIV or other infections, the incidence is much higher than that. And in genital tuberculosis, we can know that, most of, this is partly the question asked by our colleague recently, just now. So basically, we know that how the infection to the genital area usually goes through hematogenous routes, sir. You were asking this question, so but sometimes it can come through lymphatic route also, or really by direct contagious spread. I mean, there have only been few case reports where the woman got basically infection on her cervix, on her vulva and vagina by direct semen contamination, which is the open case of male urinary tract infection, but that is so rare that only few case reports are there. So almost 99% patients, maybe more than that, are because of hematogenous spread. That means patient had history of pulmonary tuberculosis in the past, which may have been suppressed now, but when the mycobacteria from lungs basically ultimately got implanted into the fallopian tube, and rarely by the lymphatic route from the GIT and all. And direct continuous spread sometimes from the GIT also it can come, like ileocecal tuberculosis may ultimately communicate to the genital tract. So in the genital organs, various organs affected in order of frequency are fallopian tube, almost 90 to 100% cases. Sir, you were asking this question. Endometrium about 70%, 50 to 80%, ovaries 20 to 30%, cervix 5 to 15%, and rarely vulva and vagina. And if only vulva vagina are involved, then it can be a case of like direct spread from the husband. Okay, so now the symptoms in genital tuberculosis, like Upasana was also discussing. So, what I want to highlight that up to 10 to 12% patient may be totally asymptomatic. Patient looks totally healthy. No, you can't say that patient has got tuberculosis, totally asymptomatic. But other symptoms like Upasana gave in her list also, like fever with night sweats, loss of appetite, weight loss, poor general condition, they are not that obvious as they are seen in case of pulmonary tuberculosis or other extrapulmonary. In genital tuberculosis, they are very subtle signs directly. But this menstrual dysfunction is quite common actually if you carefully take the history. Initially, what happens when the tuberculosis, there are basically ulcerative lesions on the genital tract that will cause menorrhagia, sometimes postmenopausal bleeding also. But later on, the tuberculosis will eat away the endometrium and patient will have oligomenorrhea, hypomenorrhea, and ultimately she may even have amenorrhea, primary and secondary both. And sometimes unmarried girls, my wife has done work on this. So you can have actually primary amenorrhea in the adolescent girls also, which may be related to either involvement of the genital tract or because of the anti-gonadotrophic effect of the of tuberculosis. Then this infertility is fairly common, primary, secondary both. Patient can present with mass abdomen, abdominal pain, chronic pelvic pain, acute abdominal vaginal discharge. Similarly, there may be no physical sign in up to 10 to 12% patients. So fever, lymphadenopathy in lymph node TB, crepitation on chest examination, PTB, abdominal examination may show mass abdomen, which is vague or definite. Ascites, doughy feel of the abdomen. So how to differentiate between ovarian mass or definite mass is in that case, you can have a clear cut, very well-defined mass. But in case of tuberculosis, it's more of vague or, not rather definite, and there can be doughy feel of the abdomen. On vaginal examination, uterine enlargement may be there, which can be secondary to the secondary infection of pyometra. Adnexal masses, induration, tubovarian masses, fullness and tenderness in the pouch of Douglas. And here also, the mass may be vague actually rather than definite. And really, like I told before, also hypertrophic or ulcerative lesions in the cervix, vagina, vulva. This can be there in primary tuberculosis of those areas. Labial mass can also be there, like Bartholin. And I have seen, a few girls even who had came with vesicovaginal and rectovaginal fistula. I had one girl, she developed rectovaginal fistula. I thought it must be some like sexual assault, but there was no such history. And when we took biopsy, it was tuberculosis. So when we gave her ATT, and while I was preparing that, I'll stitch it later, the fistula healed itself. So that is important to say that whenever you have any mass, whenever you have any fistula, first give her full course of ATT and then only think of surgery. Many times the fistula and masses, they disappear of their own. Okay, so the diagnosis, family history, as I said before, also of tuberculosis, history of anti-tuberculosis therapy, close family member or past history is very, very crucial, and do take it in details and in basically confidence. Then general physical examination for any lymphadenopathy, any evidence of TB at any other site, bone, joint, skin, chest examination, abdominal examination, examination of external genitalia, vulva, vagina, speculum examination, cervical tuberculosis. I have at least seen about 10 to 12 patients who masquerade like cervical malignancy. In fact, I took biopsy thinking it is a case of cervical cancer, but the patients were young and infertile, and that gave the clue, and ultimately they turned out to be cervical tuberculosis. So cervical tuberculosis can actually masquerade like cervical carcinoma, but the young age of the patient, infertility, and thin build of the patient goes in favor of tuberculosis. Then at other side, I want to highlight at least 2 or 3 girls. One was niece of my very close friend, you know, she himself a doctor. She was admitted, she has a TOMAS, unmarried girl, no sexual activity. And I was wondering what to do. I was thinking of doing like FNAC from that, you know, but in unmarried girl from going in this thing. So, but when we carefully, I admitted the patient, and next day when I examined her carefully, there was a like on her knee joint, there was some fluid coming from her knee joint. And when we took the sample from there, it turned out to be skeletal tuberculosis. So the TO mass and was explained by tuberculosis. So we gave her ATT and the mass disappeared. Another girl, she was found to have a lymph node in her neck, you know, from which we could take a biopsy or FNAC, which was tuberculosis. So then this we could treat, because taking sample in unmarried girls from tubo-ovarian masses or this thing is very difficult, and we should avoid doing that. If you do careful examination, at least 2 patients, I myself missed time giving the example, where we admitted the patient, and when next day on the round, when I examined her carefully, so I found a lymph node in her neck, and in another patient, like discharging sinus from her knee joint. So you have to be very, very careful about that, and that can give you a clue. So then the test will depend upon the site of tuberculosis and its clinical presentation. So as we have already discussed, the patient is married and sexually active, then endometrial biopsy, curate or aspirate, whatever way you want to say it. So usually in AIIMS, we take with the number 4 Carmen's cannula, but can be taken with PIPEL, can be done, like curate can also be done. And sometimes we can take biopsy from fluid, from peritoneal fluid and all. But as far as menstrual blood is concerned, I mean, I often I get question from the this thing. So usually, if it's a sexually active woman, the best sample is endometrial biopsy or curate and aspirate, not menstrual blood. Menstrual blood does not have such good pickup for tuberculosis. But in case of unmarried girls, I mean, sometimes then we can. I mean, I had this daughter of a brigadier from military, unmarried, 35-year-old and all. In that case, there was tubo-ovarian mass, and then because she was unmarried, not non-sexually active. So I sent the menstrual blood, and it turned out to be a positive PCR. CBNet was not there available at that time. So because she had TOMAS, she had other features. So clinical suspicion, menstrual dysfunction plus PCR. As a special case, I treated that patient. But I don't want to recommend that, and like menstrual blood should be routinely done. But in case of non-sexually active, yes, it can be one of the samples. Then samples for culture and CBNet should never be collected in formalin or any preservative, but in normal saline. That is important. And divide into 3 parts, like dry slide for AFB staining, wet slide in formalin for histopath. Sorry, this should be saline. And glass bottle with normal saline. LG. This, I mean, we are not going to detail, but MGAT, CBNet technique, etc. can be done. And formalin is not for cytology, but it is mainly for histopath. So these are the accepted microbiological diagnostic methods, like you can do gel staining, solid liquid culture system, CBNet. So normally in endometrial sample, like when I'm sending the sample, I do one, send it for formalin for histopath epithelial granuloma, as in your case, Dr. Sir presented just now, and then AFB microscopy, AFB culture, and AFB the histopath, and then of course PCR and gene expert, including for rifampicin resistance sensitivity. So this is what, and these days like TrueNet has also become available, but till now we are doing only gene expert or CBNet. So this is, and yeah. So other investigations have some doubtful role, like we do routinely do complete blood count. That means so a little bit of like anemia, leukocytosis, some lymphocytosis, raised ESR goes in that favor. X-ray test to confirm or exclude respiratory tuberculosis. Mantox test, basically, if it is more than 10 millimeter in duration, it indicates that person has been infected with M tuberculosis. Then serological tests should not be done. They are banned by Government of India, not to be done. But endometrial biopsy we have already discussed. But sometimes, like, you know, these apart from Mantox, you can do like IGRA test, or you can do quantiferon test. I mean, they may have some role, but we are not routinely doing them. Mantox test can be done. So this is on endometrial sampling. I already said that we do this culture, smear and culture, and you can do, of course, BACTEC. I'm not going to details of BACTEC, MGIT and all, but one of the cultures can be done depending on what is available in your center. And PCR alone, basically, it is a rapid sensitive and specific method, but it has very false positivity rate and negativity. So alone, we don't use PCR alone. We don't use as a method of diagnosis. But yes, when you are not able to do anything else and you have done it, then you can use it to do laparoscopy or hysteroscopy on the patient, but not to start ATT. So we never start ATT on the basis of PCR only. So these are the other tests we have already discussed. Yes, suppose the patient has got PCR, she has got infertility, she has got some tubo-ovarian mass on clinical examination, then you can do like one of the diagnostic models like ultrasound, CT, MRI, PET. You don't have to do everything depending on what is available. Simple ultrasound examination by an experienced person can sometimes pick up the like tubo-ovarian mass and some subtle findings, some stroke, some fluid in that area, some web appearance, cobweb appearance, etc. Similarly, CT, MRI can pick up even the lymphadenopathy also in these patients. And HSG, normally we avoid HSG in a case of tuberculosis because HSG can flare up the infection. But quite often, a patient was not suspected to be having genital tuberculosis, and HSG was done by doctors from outside. So we get picture of that. I'll be showing you some of the pictures. So they can be present, but in very advanced cases. And PET-CT scan, normally we don't do its expensive investigation, but it may have a role when you have got a tubo-ovarian mass and you don't know what it is, then it will show increased glucose uptake. But more role of PET-CT will be in case of in a follow-up case. Like I had patients where a patient had TO mass and other evidence of tuberculosis. So I treated the patient with ATT for 6 months, and after that the mass was still persisting. Now I have to rule out whether it is a case of MDR tuberculosis or what it is. Or sometimes the mass just, was slightly smaller, but then was remaining there. Like just like in lymph node tuberculosis, sometimes you get fibrotic lymph node, which is not actually, doesn't have active disease, though you don't have to treat it. In that case, PET-CT can sometimes help you. I'm not recommending it routinely, but like, it may be of use in the remaining masses. If that shows still increased activity, then you should do more tests on the patient, like maybe FNAC from that area, and try to rule out any basically MDR tuberculosis. Main role is whether we are dealing with a case of MDR tuberculosis or it is just a fibrotic lesion, which doesn't need any treatment. In that case, I mean, it may have some role, but again, you have to confirm with then you can take FNAC from that area, endometrial sample, and do culture. Endoscopy, of course, is a very useful modality. I'll be discussing hysteroscopy and laparoscopy in case of infertility. So these are the basically newer. GeneXpert, of course, is now accepted for all. And these are the basically same tests, rapid diagnostic test. So MGIT, CBNet are two, which LPA, they are the one which we do routinely. And the report of CBNet to GeneXpert can come within 2 to few hours. Liquid culture takes a lot of time, basically 42 days, and solid culture also takes longer than that. But when you want to rule out basically like drug sensitivity testing and all, along with GeneXpert, you should do that also. Okay, so this is the first choice, CBNet, liquid culture second choice, and liquid culture isolation, liquid DST third choice. Okay, these are the pictures. I don't have to tell you, all of you know. These are the tubercle bacilli which can be seen. And this is a small publication which we did on GeneXpert. I mean, now we have published a full paper also in European Journal. So GeneXpert was found to have about 30 to 35% sensitivity in genital tuberculosis, but almost 98 to 99% sensitivity. So what I mean, it is almost like AFB microscopy or AFB culture. If it is positive, then you can take it positive. But when it is negative, then it can still be positive tuberculosis. So its sensitivity is low, 30 to 35%, but specificity is almost 95 to 100%. Okay. So now radiology, I have already said, the ultrasound, CT, MRI, PET, HSG. Okay, so this is the patient positive PCR infertility, and there was this mass. But alone by seeing this mass, you can't say she has got tuberculosis. But in totality, this lady had got this echogenic mass along with oligomenorrhea, along with infertility, along with positive PCR. Then we took it as a case of tuberculosis. Again, CSCT showing tubo-ovarian mass with mesenteric lymphadenopathy, along with positive PCR, along with infertility. Then we took it as a case of tuberculosis. And this we did published in international MRI finding also. So in that case also you can get tubo-ovarian mass, hydrosalpinx, pyosalpinx, etc. Okay, again you can see these two arrows, so the TO masses and lymphadenopathy. Similarly, we did PET-CT scan published in International Journal. So you can see the increased this flame-shaped activity. The increased basically this patient had a TO mass with the increased glucose uptake, who went in favor of this. Again you can see, and then when we repeated the test later on, it became lesser basically. So this is same patient like that. So we can use, like I said, PET-CT can be used for follow-up of the patient, but I won't recommend to you people that you should start doing PET on every patient. It's an expensive investigation and doesn't add too much. Basically, only for tubo-ovarian masses you can do this test. Laparoscopy, hysteroscopy, HSG, we said, they're very, HSG finding can be done, but normally we avoid in active tuberculosis patient, but you can say very typical beaded appearance in this case, if all of you see. Okay, similarly, this patient has got absolutely dry tree branches sign. Okay, totally like if you see this is the uterus, and uterus is very small, sunken. Tubes are also basically totally like, tree branches, dry tree branches. Again, this patient has got, you can say, the dye going into the lymphatics and this thing and shrunken cavity. On laparoscopy is a very good reliable tool to diagnose FCTP on tubal ovarian peritoneal disease by direct visualization. So we have published quite a few papers on that. Like you can say tubercles on peritoneum, ovary, cages nodule, tubal ovarian mass, hydrosalpinx, pyosalpinx, tubal blockage, BD tube, tobacco pouch, abdominal pelvic perihepatic adhesion, and cystitis. And it can masquerade as ovarian cancer also. I mean, we published data on about 24 patients from 4 hospitals of Delhi, and like in which basically we opened the abdomen thinking it to be an ovarian cancer, but turned out to be tuberculosis. So if you, by mistake, you have opened an abdomen thinking to be an ovarian cancer, but turns out to be tuberculosis, so please don't try to do any surgery. Just take biopsy, come out. You can do frozen section at that time, and don't try to do surgery. We give her ATT, and that can sort out the thing. Otherwise, trying hysterectomy, trying surgery can be hazardous, can be difficult, and you still have to give ATT. And these patients are like associated with more complications. Okay, another study which we published. So this I'm showing you. So you can see this is the left fallopian tube which enlarged, distended, and red inflamed. Okay, again you can see cages nodules in this patient and frozen pelvis. Okay, so then adhesion, various type of adhesion, but mind it, alone adhesion will not be a definitive diagnosis for tuberculosis, but other finding of tuberculosis, like you are seeing infertility patient, positive PCR, menstrual dysfunction, and then when we did laparoscopy, you see tubercles, and then along with that, in almost 48 to 50% patients, we found perihepatic adhesions along with this. But mind it, along perihepatic adhesion is not a diagnostic of tuberculosis, but in association with other findings. You can see this liver, there's a perihepatic adhesion in this case, Fischer-Curtis syndrome. Again, घूंघट में है गोरी, liver hidden. Again, so this is a case of totally calcified fallopian tubes and all, very advanced case of tuberculosis. Unfortunately, it's a tuberculosis, but the prognosis for fertility is going to be very poor in this patient. Okay, again, you can see, so please, when you put a laparoscope in, do have a good look. I mean, your gynecologist should have a good look all around. Many times we just look into the pelvis and we miss like this peritoneum, we miss the abdominal cavity, we miss the omentum. Like this patient, there was, you can see the cages nodule on the omentum. So that is, again, this patient has got hydrosalpinx. Mind it, all these findings I'm showing you, they are not specific of tuberculosis. Hydrosalpinx can be there in chlamydia, gonorrhea also. But in case of infertility patient, menstrual dysfunction, positive PCR, so then I took it as a case of probable tuberculosis and treated her. Again, this is very specific of tuberculosis. You can say cages, nodule and tubercles on the fallopian tube, which is distended. Okay, again, you can see cages, this is very specific. You can see this big yellow cages nodule plus hydrosalpinx. So say tuberculosis, again hydrosalpinx, again frozen pelvis, cages nodule. Yeah, sometimes normally when we diagnose endometriosis, we rule out tuberculosis and vice versa. But in this patient, there was histopath evidence. This is a case of endometriosis plus tuberculosis. So she had got hydrosalpinx plus she has got, you can see these like reddish spots of endometriosis. So we published paper on that also. Normally, the two are, once you diagnose tuberculosis, you rule out endometriosis and vice versa. But some patient may have both. Again, this patient also have, you can say hydrosalpinx plus endometriosis. Now, this patient has got very angry looking uterus fallopian tube, not specific of tuberculosis, but this patient has positive PCR, some adhesions, and this, hyperemic inflamed tube and bleeding appearance. So tuberculosis, again, same thing. Now, you can see cages nodule, hydrosalpinx, frozen pelvis, and cages nodule too. So very specific of tuberculosis. Again, yeah, this patient has got very convoluted tube. Okay, now this patient, as if white carpet has been laid on the uterus and all. So, cages, tubercles and all. Very specific. And this, I discovered a sign called hanging gallbladder sign after my name. You can see this is gallbladder in first picture, it's down, then it's lifting up. In the third picture, it's lifted totally up. So it's hanging up because liver is adherent to the anti-abdominal wall and diaphragm. And you can see a small cages nodule in that picture. It's a very beautiful picture, very commonly used at international level. So it can cause a perihepatic adhesion tuberculosis. And there is a cages nodule in the same picture. So you can't say it is because of some other reason. Same thing, basically, a lot of, again, hanging gallbladder sign, cages nodule on the omentum. And now this, I discovered another sign also. You can see the fallopian tube, gets, when you inflate the dye, that fallopian tube get distended and inflamed and ballooned out. And it looks like a blue python. Okay, so this is also case of, it was published in Journal of Lab Physician. Then kissing fallopian tube sign. This is a very specific case of tuberculosis. You can see cages nodule, so there is no doubt about diagnosis. But if you see carefully, the cages material from one fallopian tube came out, and the two fallopian tube got fused to each other. So there is one kissing ovary sign in case of endometriosis. So I labeled it as kissing ovary tube sign. But too much love is bad. Both tube got fused to each other. But for the patient, it's very poor. Okay, so this is the again you can see. I mean, there is no doubt that the patient have tuberculosis. You can see 2 cages nodules in the same picture. Again, ascending colonic adhesion. I have observed that at the junction of lower 2/3, upper 1/3 ascending colon, there is a large adhesion that can be seen. Again, cages nodule, frozen pelvis. Okay, so similarly, same thing basically. Again, cages nodule, frozen pelvis, and yeah, and this is along with this patient had liver cirrhosis along with not related to tuberculosis. But I just want to highlight that when we are doing laparoscopy, we should have a good look inside. We can make other diagnosis of other things also. And then this dried tree branch sign, I said that the fallopian tube look like a dried tree branch, and you can say, okay. And there's on laparoscopy in the same patient, you can see the tube looks totally calcified. So this goes in favor of tuberculosis. So this I gave it a sign after my name. And now this is this is ascending colon basically. So ascending colon is totally adherent to the anti-abdominal wall. So the importance is that when we do laparoscopy, we put the second port from this area. So we can straightway enter the ascending colon. So we can enter the ascending colon. So that's why you have to be very careful while doing laparoscopy that, under vision only we should put the second port. So same patient, when we magnified it, you can see, can you see the small cages nodules on this is the ascending colon basically. So we call it parachute sign in after my name in Abdominopelvic TV already published, and with tubercles, and same thing in high power, you can say. Then on histoscopy also sometimes you can see KJ, like you can say grade 3 adhesion to grade 2 adhesions, pale cavity, tubercles, all this can be seen very advanced pale cavity, and adhesions for this thing. So same thing. So basically, but what I have observed that there is increased risk of complications in laparoscopy, histoscopy, and other surgeries in tuberculosis. So this should be done by senior persons, experienced persons. And many times you may not be able to see, and we shouldn't make it a prestige point. If you are doing laparoscopy, if you are not able to see, everything is frozen, it's better to come out, take biopsy and come out and give a ATT. Okay. So, but at the end of the surgery, at the end of like what I do after giving them 6 months course of ATT, I tend to repeat laparoscopy, histoscopy, and endometrial biopsy in them. Number one, to confirm that treatment is completely cured, AFB are no longer there. And secondly, to see how much is the prognosis for fertility. So if at the end of the therapy, like their fallopian tube are open, then they can try for conception straight away. If tubes are blocked, endometrium is normal, they can go for IVF ET. If tubes are blocked, endometrium is also basically not receptive, Esserman syndrome is there, then they go for surrogacy. And if sometimes even ovaries are eaten by the tuberculosis, then they go for adoption. So this is important, and the treatment all of you know, I won't go into detail, but now routinely we are giving them daily dose of isoniazid, rifampicin, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, just like in the program basically what you are giving, and then for 2 months, and then for next 4 months we are giving 4 HRE basically. That means for 4 months of isoniazid, rifampicin, ethambutol. In olden days, we used to give them twice weekly. We used to give only HR, that is gone now, and the category also has been stopped now. So all patients, whether new, old, we are giving now the 2 HRZD for 2 months and HRE for next 4 months. And I won't go into detail of MDR tuberculosis, but I mean, if it's a case of MDR tuberculosis, you should refer the patient to a specialist, where the patients are given basically 8 drugs and all for almost 24 months. I want like 6 to 9 months of intensive phase, 18 months of continuation phase. So I won't go into detail of that, that the program will teach you. But this is ultimately, and usually the treatment has to be given through DOTS centers. But sometimes patient can buy also. I won't recommend that, but they should do. And the most patient tolerate it safely. We should counsel them, and you can give them pyridoxine. And if the patient has got symptoms of this thing, then you can test them for any hepatitis by doing liver function tests, and similarly any ethambutol toxicity, neuropathy with the isoniazid, and hepatic toxicity. And surgery, normally, we should avoid surgery in them, but at the end of the therapy, I already said, because it's better, like if you open the abdomen and thinking to be cancer and all, it turns out to be tuberculosis, it's better to just take biopsy, come out and start ATT rather than doing surgery. This is the patient which I myself opened. You can see everything was frozen, and you can see this, cages material coming out. So if had I, pursued, then I would have injured the bowel and all. So this was from the omentum. I took omental biopsy, did frozen sectioning. It turned out to be tuberculosis. So closed the abdomen, gave her ATT. This is my own patient, yeah. And I already said that in these patients, assisted reproduction is a very good modality. After the end of the therapy, the tubes are open, endometrium is fine, they can try for conception. Otherwise, if the tubes are blocked, endometrium is fine, they can go for IVF-ET. The results are very good, but without ATT, the results are poor. So after treatment, then because the tuberculosis causes infertility, it basically shifts the balance toward Tha1 to, instead of Tha2. So that means more interleukin cytokines, which are aborting, basically they are raised, and there is implantation failure in these patients. So otherwise, and if the tubes are blocked, endometrium is also not receptive, then they can go for either surrogacy or adoption, really patients. So at the end of it, I mean, even if I'm not able to give the baby to the patient, I am able to help her to guide that, she may cry and all, but I tell her that, look, your tubes are blocked, endometrium is not receptive. Why to sell your house or land and go for adoption and all. So they cry and all, but ultimately then, they reconcile to it and they say thank you. But many patients are helped also. Almost 30% patient may have a baby after IVF-ET. In my experience, about only 10 to 12% patients will have without it, this thing, and about 25 to 30% may have after basically IVF-ET. But about 50 to 60% patient will never have, or they will require adoption and all. So the same thing, basically pregnancy rate are poorer as by this thing, and index TB guidelines have been made for that. So this is the last slide basically. So what I mean to say that whenever you are suspecting a case of FGTB, so you do endometrial sampling and do the composite reference standard is nothing but either AFB microscopy, AFB culture, gene expert positive, or histopath positive. And then, or we do, if it is positive, then you start ATT. If it is like only PCR positive, rest everything is negative, but other clinical suspicion, then there is TO mass, then you can do ultrasound or MRI. If there are finding on them, then you can, it's a case of possible TB, you can start ATT. But if on laparoscopy, histoscopy, if you do, and you can get positive finding of tuberculosis on laparoscopy or probable or possible finding, then again you start ATT. Otherwise, if PCR, only PCR positive, rest everything is negative, no TO mass and laparoscopy, histoscopy also normal, then sees a negative case. So only on the basis of PCR, we don't diagnose tuberculosis, we don't give treatment. But yes, if positive PCR with the positive masses on ultrasound, CT, MRI, yes, possible TB, we can start treatment. Similarly, positive PCR with some laparoscopy, histoscopy finding, then also possible, it can be definite tuberculosis, it can be possible tuberculosis, then also we are we can start treatment. So thank you very much. So this is the take home message rate, basically important cause of infertility, clinical history, examination, investigations, medical treatment is important. Surgery is rarely required, but laparoscopy, histoscopy is useful. Rarely if there is an abscess, we can drain that. Prognosis for fertility is poor, but IVF-ET has a good chance. And in future, there may be, I got patients, unmarried girls from very good families, they have developed Esterman syndrome, and they have become amenorrheic even before marriage. From rich families, patient doing MBA, patient computer engineers and all. So stem cell therapy may have a role in regeneration of endometrium in some of these patients, but it is still experimental. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That was an amazing presentation, sir. मतलब इसमें कोई doubt ही नहीं है, sir. It was a totally amazing presentation, and I'm feeling totally out of my depth trying to summarize it. But still, as a moderator, it is like my duty to sort of summarize it. So I am trying. There will be many lacunae, but still I'll try, and then I'll open it to the house. So we need to know that genital tuberculosis in females are mostly secondary to pulmonary TB, mostly through the hematogenous spread, uncommonly through lymphatic spread, and very, very rarely through the gut, and sometimes by direct inoculation if it is only of the vulva and the vagina. The fallopian tubes are most commonly affected. A person may be totally asymptomatic, a lady might be asymptomatic with genital TB, or they might be just general overlapping constitutional symptoms of TB. But commonly there are menstrual irregularities and infertility. The signs on physical examination might be vague, one of them being a doughy abdomen, occasionally an ulcerative lesion, which is quite rare, but if it is there, it could indicate a primary TB, or maybe a fistula in a few cases. Always when you suspect genital TB, please look for TB of other sites, because other sites are easier to sample, to get a biological sample which could be put up for TB testing as compared to a genital sample. This is especially more difficult when the girl is young and she's sexually inactive or unmarried, because then it is very, very difficult to do endometrial biopsy. In sexually active, the preferred sample would be an endometrial biopsy. In unmarried, one could try the menstrual blood, but the yield of the menstrual blood is very less. And so then you would need to go on, if you can't do an endometrial biopsy, you would need to go on to maybe an endoscopy. Always remember that every sample that we send for TB has to go in normal saline. If you send a sample in formalin, it cannot be tested for AFB or for MTB. Formalin is to be taken only for histopath. The best test is CBNAT. One shot, you get to know whether it is TB, and also you get to know about the sensitivity pattern. Then liquid culture, and then liquid culture and sensitivity. If you see a TO mass on one of your radiology, you can always use a radiology like an ultrasound, a CT, a PET. If you see a TO mass, then which is persisting, maybe even after treatment, the DD comes out to be MDR TB or maybe an ovarian CA. And if you have when it comes to treatment, the treatment for sensitive TB is the same as is for all other sensitive TB. The 4-HRZE plus 4-HE, 2-HRZE plus 4-HE. And surgery in cases of TB is best avoided because you would not want to disseminate the TB or injure other parts of the bowel. And as we saw that Sir has many, many signs which are named after him because he has done pioneering work in the field of genital TB, like the hanging gallbladder sign, the blue python sign, the kissing fallopian tube sign, and there were several more, and I have not been able to keep up because of my limited knowledge. One thing that he emphasized right in the beginning and again, it is that PCR alone with no other evidence can never be used as a single tool to diagnose genital TB. It has a high false positivity rate. And another thing that he had emphasized right at the beginning was that please take a proper history. In many women, you will find if there is no current active TB anywhere, you might find a past history of TB. It might be in the person, like she might have had TB in her youth or adolescent. Be sensitive, do not ask it in front of their husbands, their families, their in-laws. And the second thing is that they might never have had an active TB, but there might be a history of caregiving to parents or grandparents who were affected by TB. So this is a very, very useful insight which is given by an expert, that this is how they might be present to you. And if we have the knowledge in our mind, then we would be able to ask for these specific questions. And the last but not the least, please control the primary disease. If we do not control HIV, we cannot expect to have a successful treatment outcome for the TB. So this is, I think, the summarization, sir. Sir, have I missed out anything important?
No, you have summarized much more better than my presentation actually. No?
Okay. So now I open it to the house. So are there any questions? And now I know, sir, you had a question from NRI AP. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please ask the question, sir. Sir, there is a Professor Sharma, sir. There's a question.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
Sir, can I get we get this your presentation, a beautiful presentation and more educate, and is an excellent presentation, because one of your juniors, he was the professor here just yesterday, he has seen about your lecture and he requested us also, please kindly get Dr. Sharma's lecture. It is useful to our PGs also.
Sure,
So,
sir.
Please kindly give your presentation to our college, sir. All the postgraduates will be, and your friend, your junior also will be happy, professor. And for also it is an educator, because I asked the question about the fellow, Dr. Sharma and I have studied. So I want not only just only uterus, but the surrounding structures and tuberculosis of the abdomen, and all these are involved. What are these things we have to look after? I am once again kindly, please kindly give that presentation, and I am once again thanks to our Dr. Upasana, the Magadol, and our Bandla, Vandana Bandla madam, a beautiful most excellent presentation to choose you as the moderator for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I allow. Dr. Vandana, you can share with them. No? Just like
Yes, sure, sir.
Yeah.
I'll share with all. Yeah.
that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So kind of you, sir. You're sharing your original work with people. But yes, it would be a really very, very good learning experience. Any other questions, please? I'll just answer the Iris question in 2 minutes. Any other questions before I answer the Iris question?
We have one question in the chat which talks about if there is any add-on role in diagnosis of related to PRT MRI if we do.
MRI. MRI, you mean? Magnetic resonance
sir.
imaging? Yes,
sir. MRI. I think so. It's MRI, right?
MRI, basically, CT scan, MRI, PET, ultrasound, I said, and Upasana also said that basically if there is any tubovarian mass and there was positive PCR or some other evidence, like we suspected clinically, and then there is a tubovarian mass, then there is a role of PET and MRI. MRI naturally has got a better evaluating modality. It can pick up smaller lymph nodes also. So it has a role only in tubovarian masses. But if the pelvis otherwise on clinical examination you don't suspect anything, then usually we don't do MRI because it's an expensive modality. So they have very limited role. I don't want actually the house to know that they start getting MRI on all patients of suspected this thing and unnecessarily wasting the money of the patient, and you don't actually pick up many cases. Only if clinical suspicion of tubovarian mass, yes.
Yeah, so thank you, sir. So that's a very, very fine point that we have to understand that see, a good ultrasound, a good CT might be more than enough. You really actually don't need to go on to an MRI. You might need to go on to an MRI and PET in a rare case where you are suspecting something like non-resolution, or do you want to see very, very, very something that like you're really at a loose end and you want to sort of see something more beyond the CT scan. So thank you for that, sir. Any other, Vandana, is there any other question in the chat?
Yes, there is one which talks about they want to please repetition of presumptive TB.
Okay, presumptive actually, yeah, I don't like to use the word, but basically like you have definite tuberculosis. Definite will be demonstration of AB on microscopy, culture. Gene expert also is also definite. Histopath epidermoid is also almost definite. But then like probable is like on laparoscopy we have tubercles, some suspicion of that. And tubal is like you have some straw-colored fluid, some adhesions, but not very typical of tuberculosis. But like infertility patient, positive PCR, oligomenorrhea, and then those presumptive signs also. So you can take it as a presumptive tuberculosis or possible tuberculosis, almost similar thing. So in that case, still, I mean, even now, still possibly, I'm also or treating some of the patient which may be because of chlamydia or gonorrhea, but I mean infertility patient with oligomenorrhea, with infertility with some positive PCR and with some finding on laparoscopy. So then we give them benefit of doubt. We make it a diagnosis of presumptive tuberculosis or possible tuberculosis, and we start them ATT. But if laparoscopy is totally clear, basically, then you shouldn't give only on the basis of PCR.
Thank you, sir. Any other question, please? I can see Dr. Ganesh asking something. Dr. Ganesh, is your doubt cleared?
I am Dr. Ganesh, pulmonologist from Salem. First of all, I thank Dr. Sharma for his excellent presentation on female genital tuberculosis. And next, I congratulate our Senior Medical Officer Arunachalam sir for his excellent presentation. I would like to add some point on this case because this is an HIV case which has virological and immunological failure also, and patient has previous exposure of INH for 6 months. And in India, pre-treatment INH resistance is more common. Whenever we go for this microbiological test, I would suggest we should do not only the CBNAT. So we have to send specimen for MIGIT also, so that we can know the pattern of INH also. So first of all, it is happy to see microbiological test is being done in extrapulmonary sample, and this is a precious sample which cannot be repeated. Hence, I would suggest it would be sent to both CBNAT and midget. So which will get a good yield very well.
Yeah.
Point
Thank you
taken.
very much, sir. That's
Very
a
well
brilliant
said.
suggestion. But I also said, no, we never do alone CBNet. We always send for AFB microscopy. We always send for AFB culture as well as gene expert. I mean, the CBNet. So culture has to be done in all the cases. I like never said that you don't do it. And I totally agree with you. That will give you basically drug sensitivity also. It will confirm the diagnosis also. And in fact, I have I didn't show that in my presentation. We have published data on 6 patients of MDR genital TB also, out of which 2 were primary MDR TB, only genital TB. Other 4 were like, MDR pulmonary TB with associated genital TB, or lymph node MDR with the genital TB. So that's a very good suggestion you have said, and that's how we could diagnose them, because we were doing a culture sensitivity, and on culture it came that it was MDR TB. So that's a very good session. I totally agree with you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Ganesh, thank you so much for your input. See, this patient had IPT, they had INH prophylaxis. So Dr. Ganesh's concern was that this could be only H resistance, like it could be H only resistance. If possible, maybe we could possibly follow up in this particular case only. Dr. Sharma definitely told us that we should do culture, but in this case, maybe you could follow up with the gynecologist and see if they had got a culture also done, a mycobacterial culture done, and maybe just confirm if the H was sensitive. It could be a mono H resistance case because of the INH prophylaxis. Though with INH prophylaxis in the field, whatever results we have from the field, it has been seen that INH prophylaxis does not increase the H resistance in people living with HIV in those cases who develop active TB after a course of IPT. But it is a very, very valid point. It says, but the guideline also says that if after IPT you get TB, then you should rule out mono H resistance. So as Dr. Sharma also said, please could you just follow up with your gynecologist and see if they had put a culture in this case. Before we finish, because we are a little, we have crossed the time, I would like to answer Zarina's question, why it cannot be iris. See, number one, there are 2 kinds of iris. One is a paradoxical iris, in which you already have evidence of clinical TB. The patient is on TB treatment, you start ART and the TB worsens. So obviously this is not a case of paradoxical iris, because there was no evidence of TB at the time of ART initiation. The second thing is unmasking iris. In unmasking iris, there is no evidence of TB at the time of starting ART, but within 3 months of starting ART, you get active TB in the patient. So in this patient, they got TB after 2 years of starting ART. So this patient got TB after 2 years. So it's well out of the time frame of unmasking TB. That is why we are saying it is not iris. And the other thing that is very important in this case, Dr. Arunachalam, is that I think we have to think about shifting the patient's ART regimen. I think it is failure and the patient needs to go on a second line ART regimen. Is there anything else that the house would like to know? Dr. Sharma, there is a Dr. Sandhya who is congratulating in chat for your talk. She says it was the most excellent talk that she has heard.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sandhya. Thanks a lot.
Anything else?
I think we must congratulate Dr. Arunachalam also for his excellent case presentation.
Yes, sir. And to bring such things to the forefront of e-Nishit is very, very important, because as I said, our poor medical officer is like jack of all trades. ART medical officer has to treat everything, everyone, because it so happens that if you label the person as PLHIV, after that, nobody wants that patient. The total onus and ownership of that patient is of the ART center. Am I right? Please raise hands who have faced that in ART center. This patient is now yours. Like in Hindi they say na, Jeena yahan, marna yahan. So it is like Jeena in ART, marna in ART, we don't know. We have to treat the genital TB, pulmonary TB, brain TB, lymph node TB, everything we have to treat. So I'm very, very thankful to Dr. Arunachalam for bringing this case to the forefront. Is there anything else that we need to know before we do the post-test? Vandana, are you okay for the post-test?
Yes, ma'am. Post-test is already shared with the participants, and already 19 participants have started doing it. And we just want to announce that the same lecture, the same sessions will be repeated next week, Thursday, on 17th December 2020 at same time 2 p.m. for Northern staff. So any staff, any ART center who wants to join again to hear sir and ask more questions if they have, they can freely join.
Okay. And I think we must thank Dr. Vandana also for beautifully anchoring everything and organizing. And of course, all credit goes to Upasana.
No, sir, not to me. Vandana and her team is very active, sir. So they keep on. Vandana, can you just discuss the post test, because I think we are 20 minutes over.
Yes. So quickly, the first question talks about the symptoms which can occur in genital TB, and we were having options like fever with night sweats, weight loss, menstrual dysfunction, infertility, primary and secondary. So now we know all these symptoms can occur and in genital tuberculosis, apart from amenorrhea and abdominal pain, and which we have just seen with the SIRS presentation. So the option is the all of above. The second question is, which of the following option can be adopted to diagnose genital TB? And options are history, clinical examination, endometrial sampling for AFP culture, PCR and histopathological testing, laparoscopy and hysteroscopy, and all of above. So now we know the option is all of above.
And we know that PCR alone without anything else can never be used as a diagnostic standard. So with this, I would like to thank Professor Sharma again. Thanks Vandana, Gaurav and Ajit, and thanks to all my ART centers for joining in. So next week, again, we do it for UP, Delhi and North Indian states. Anybody who wants to join in is most welcome. Sir, and with this, we would sign off, I think, without much ado. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.